this is hard for me to say because, Chase, I was forged, my basketball early philosophies in the game were forged through Steve Clifford's coaching. I used to coach basketball in the UK, and I used to take his low turnover, transition defense, defensive rebounding approach, and they were my coaching philosophies. He genuinely was who I modeled the coach of when I was in my early 20s. And trust me, I'm the very last person in the crowd to ever criticize coaching, because we don't see 99% of what's going on behind the scenes. And, you can look at the Denver Nuggets last year. They will have had fans who have criticized Mike Malone for his rotations and who he did and didn't play, right? It's just something that happens. And this has nothing to do with rotations. For me, like his hands have been tied this year. For me, it's if you look at the statistical profile of this team, there are some extremely, especially for Steve Clifford coach team, worrying signs. So before I get into the details, I mean, this was something I said to you the other week. I said off air after you finished, I said, Chase, I'm just mentioning this and locking this away. This team doesn't look very well coached at the minute. And we're now 9 games in. I didn't take anything away from that Knicks game, but I feel like we're at the point now where I feel like there's some stuff here which is not changing, and I feel like it's time I have to share this. And I feel wholly uncomfortable doing it because I'm not normally I'm not blaming Steve Clifford for everything. I'm not saying this is all the coach's fault. I'm not saying Steve Clifford needs to be fired right now. What I'm saying is right now, this team doesn't look well coached. And I'm going to get into the detail behind it in a minute, but what are your thoughts? Do you think I'm reading too much into everything right now?
I don't know if you're reading too much into it. I don't know if I would say myself that I don't think the team is well coached, but I mean, you're not wrong. Like the trends and the tendencies of this team right now, don't line up with like modern NBA trends and tendencies at all. Like they take actually, now that I look at it, this must have been updated from yesterday. They take the second fewest threes per game in the NBA. The Lakers are actually take the fewest threes per game in the NBA right now. But there's never a spot you want to be, especially with a team that has like an elite floor spacer in LaMelo and Terry Rozier when he eventually comes back too, and has spot up shooters like
used to be elite. We talked about this. Terry Rozier not been so elite in the last few years. Should be elite, but maybe
should be elite with the healthy roster that they had 2 years ago or whatever. Yeah. We can imagine that anyway. But even now, like their transition defense is absolutely horrible. And on top of like the fact that they just give up a lot of points as a transition defense, when they generate steals, they are 30th in frequency of like when a team steals leads to a transition play. So their steals are not even in like advantageous situations often. It's coming off of like stripping ball handlers like underneath the rim, and they're not creating like super high-paced opportunities on the other end. The team really only gets to run like off of makes and misses, like, which is just a really, really difficult way to rely on your offense, is to force a miss and then push off of it every time. It's A, tiring, and B, relies on the other team missing, which in the NBA and with how skilled players are now is a tough thing to rely on a night in and night out. And on top of that, you're not even giving yourself a chance to be that team that's, making a bunch of shots, even though the other team is playing defense, because your 3-point frequency and is about as low as it could possibly be. Like, it's just, I don't think that it's necessarily like Steve Clifford's messages are incorrect, because he said in that post-game, or I think it was a pregame interview before the Wizards game with Eric Collins, he's like, we need to take more threes. This is ridiculous. He's like, there is no reason that we should be taking as few threes as we are right now. We have too many good shooters, and you can't win games taking this few threes. We need to.
This isn't Monty Williams in Phoenix, where he was like, no, we want to take mid-range shots. I want to take, they're elite. Steve Clifford has said all the right things.
Yeah,
but
it's just not.
At the end of the day, a coach's job, like me or you, can sit here and say, well, they need to take more threes. It doesn't make
exactly.
Coaches, right? The coaches need to be able to get their players to execute their instruction. That's what makes elite coaches. Is you influence, you help people understand and learn. And that's something that's not happened. So what you talked about them not being modern in terms of their shot profile, like you say, 30th in the NBA in 3-point attempts, or it might be 29th now, like you said. I will say that
really.
they just 27.9% of their shots were threes. That was 2.1% below the next team, which was Orlando at 29th. 2.1%. That's the difference between 29th to 23rd. So they are 30th, cut away by a mile here. This isn't just that they could be 25th quite easily. They are lagging way behind everything. 30th in 3-point shooting, 30% as a team. They are, again, 1.2% behind the next team. I think it's like 3 or 4 teams tied in 31.4%. So again, like comfortably in last place. They are straight 30th in defense, 122.6 points per 100 possessions. We started talking about them being their top 10 defense after the All-Star break last year. They are the worst defense in the NBA with the easiest strength of schedule so far. This 3-6 record is mirage. They played a harder schedule. They could be like 0-10. They've not played well. I'd say they've played well in maybe half a game in that Atlanta Hawks game, and then like a quarter here and there. And they've managed to eke out some wins against Indiana, against Washington through good brief spells. They are 28th in free throw rate. So they're conceding 30th in defense. They're fouling everybody. They're turning the ball over. Their transition defense is terrible. 30th in transition defense, like you talked about. So this is a Steve Clifford coach team. 30th in transition defense, 30th in defense altogether, 28th in free throw rate, putting people on the foul line, 13th in turnovers. These are not Clifford coaching philosophies. This is the type of team that Steve Clifford hates. This is the type of team that Steve Clifford has to be, if he had any hair left, would be pulling out. Now, I can see some people going, well, look at Mark Williams. He's been great. He had the 2020 game, and he has been great. But also Mark Williams' success, for me, is also an indicator of like this team's wider struggles. This team is scoring on the paint all the time because it's all they can do. And it's the only way they can score. And they're getting to Mark Williams all the time. And it's a benefit of the play style. Like he got 15 offensive rebounds against the Wizards. And a lot of his points came from those and a lot of his rebounds. But that's also because they're, 1, missing all their shots. And then 2, because they're trying to offensive rebound, they're not getting back in defense. So, like, Mark Williams has had some really positive moments. But equally, I think his success sometimes is coming at the cost of maybe some wider team style success. And he's having some of his statistics inflated a little bit. They keep talking about playing fast, how this team is built to play fast. They're 25th in transition frequency. And even when they get in transition, they're only 21st. LaMelo Ball has taken 8 shot attempts in transition this season and scored once. LaMelo Ball is supposed to be a one-man fast break. And yes, I know he drives the pass, probably 99% of the time. But he should be taking, trail man threes. He should be going coast to coast, getting to the rim. And that is just not happening. And this goes all the way back to the start of training camp, where Steve Clifford said, and he did the same thing last year. He says, what a lot of teams do early is they put in like a lot of defense and offense. What I like to do is we scrimmage, we get up and down because the guys like it. It's good, it's competitive, it's enjoyable. That's great. And it all sounds great. But this team looks like one that has not worked on its defense, on its offense, especially its defensive stuff enough. And I wonder if Steve Clifford could go back in time now and change that. Maybe that is how they used to do it. And he talks about that's how the Van Gundys used to do it. Yeah. Well, are any of the Van Gundys coaching in the NBA right now? No, Steve, they're not. Maybe times have moved on. And actually, we should be focusing on some of the scheme stuff in training camp. And like for me, people should come into the season in good shape. Like Premier League football clubs, they don't coach fitness in the first few weeks of the season. That's like a guarantee. Like that should, if you're a professional, you turn up, you're fit. Preseason is where you start to build your identity into your team. And this is just not a well-coached team to start the year. Now, I'm not saying it can't get better. They made progress last year throughout the season. Despite the low wins, they made progress. He's shown Steve Clifford teams have generally got better throughout the year. But that needs to start happening quickly. And they don't have the guns right now with the guys available. Because if it doesn't, Steve Clifford is not going to see out this year as head coach. If these trends continue, by the time we get to January, February, I do not see the front office ownership keeping Steve Clifford in place.
That was extremely well said. That was one of the best soliloquies I think we've gotten on this podcast right now. But I want to ask you a question, James.
Mm-hmm.
LaMelo Ball leads the team in total free throw attempts this year, 39. He's made 32 of them, so obviously shooting pretty well from the line. Where do you think that ranks in the entire league among just total free throw attempts for individual players? Where do you think that ranks in the NBA right now?
Oh, wow. How many did you say he had this season?
39. 39 in 9 games.
39 in 9 games. I mean, it's not a great deal. 50th?
You're very close. 45th.
Oh.
But still, there is not a single other team that has a player who's leading the team in free throw attempts that low. And when you put that next to the fact that they are leading the league in points in the paint per game, what I think that says, and you brought it up too, the only thing that they can do to get a paint touch is run pick and roll, or have LaMelo like use his ball handling and get to the rim, or Hayward like drop his shoulder and work his way in there. Besides that, they have quite literally no way for someone to break down their defender off the dribble, get into the paint, create contact, or, you know, some sort of defensive collapse where you can kick it out, which it literally is causing both of their problems. Like, they're not shooting threes because when they drive into the paint, it's off of a pick and roll. So the defense only has to really defend that. And you just have to like tag the roller, make sure that you're in the right spots to rotate and help and whatnot. And otherwise, they're just not getting to the line either. So you are not getting any sort of production out of the two most efficient shots in basketball, while also like you are getting to the paint. You're not doing it in like the right way. Like it's like you're like almost there and you have the capability to do it, but the offense, like when it does anything that's not a pick and roll, like the first action, like if they run something in like horns or whatever, the ball gets to the elbow and it just dies. Like there's no movement, player movement, ball movement, cutting, nothing after that. They like run something like a pistol action from the empty side. Like the guy takes the pitch and comes up out of the corner and nothing happens. Like they just dribble for a couple seconds or make a non-threatening pass to somebody on the other side of the ball or on the other side of the court, and they just run the same thing. Like there's just no like second level to like anything so far, really. Like if that makes any sense. Like it's just like come set a screen, roll to the rim, or fade to the 3-point line. That didn't work. Oh, let me kick the ball over to the next guy. Then someone else can go set a screen for them and they can run it again. And it just goes and goes until you get a bad shot or a turnover or, you know, some pick and roll layup with Mark and Nick, which has worked. But if that's the only thing you can do, you're in a good heap of trouble, which is what we've seen so far with the offense, I think, is still in the top 12 in offensive rating. That does not match the eye test whatsoever to me. Like, do you think that there are 18 teams in the league that are worse at offense than the Hornets right now? Like, I don't. Like, I think they can score a lot of points because of LaMelo and Hayward. It's
only because of the schedule. Chase, if they played good teams, I'm telling you, they would have all looked like the Knicks game. Yeah, like they played the Wizards, the Nets, who are missing all their size, the defenders, the Pacers, who can't go. Like, this is why. This is down to the reason why their offense is so high. When they come up against a team that can protect the rim, like New York could, you see what happens. This team does not. Yeah. They do not have the offensive firepower to score at that level. So it is a mirage right now. It is all mirage. The warning signs, this is why I said those two Wizards games were must wins, because this schedule only gets so much tougher and you need to fatten up on those wins early. And I said at least the Hornets need to be 5-5 after 10 games for them to be like in playing contention. They are they're going to be at best, they're going to be 4-6. They're probably going to be 3-7. Yeah, it is. When they have everybody available, like they then have the players like everyone can dribble, pass, and shoot. When they have everybody available, but they don't have that at the minute, and they don't have a player who can just consistently draw a double that then kind of gets the defense moving and starts that. LaMelo Ball is not a double team drawing type of player right now because he's not the scoring threat. I know he's coming off 4 30-point games, but he is not someone that other teams send 2 players at. They're more than happy to live with LaMelo Ball generally under single coverage because they know he'd rather pass the ball most of the time. Yeah. So that was hard to say. I have so much respect for Steve Clifford and the work that he has done as a coach. But
I think he's a top 10 coach in the league. Like, if there's an argument for it, at least it's just not.
Well,
not landing.
I don't know if I'd make that argument now, but
yeah, now probably not. But prior to the last couple of weeks, it's just not landing anymore.